Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm so honored to have Sam from Spotify here to talk about monetization to AI, how Spotify works, how the payments work in the music industry. And there's no one better to talk about this. He's such a knowledgeable person at Spotify. And I just, in the comments, just say thank you for him spending time with us today. Sam, could you please introduce yourself and let us know in your own words what you do at Spotify, just in case if we're meeting you for the first time?
Of course. Really happy to be here, Ryan. Thanks for all the work you do educating indie artists. The industry is so confusing and complex, and the work you do to demystify it is really important. So thank you.
Oh, thanks
Really
so
happy to
much.
be here. I lead the marketing and policy team for Spotify for Artists. And so all the tools and products we build to help artists get analytics, upload videos that create the world around their music, sell merch and tickets, promote their work. All those tools my team helps kind of bring to market, educate artists on how they work, and hopefully get their feedback and make our products even better. And we do a lot of policy work as well around issues I know you care about a lot: artificial streaming, AI, royalties, making sure it's as kind of fair and rewarding a music platform as we can provide. So excited to chat here today.
Awesome, man. Yeah. So when I first heard of your title, and we don't have to talk too much about this, but when you set policy for Spotify, that means you are literally leading the team. You're having discussions with the Spotify team, which are a lot of them are musicians, right? And you guys are deciding the future, not only of the platform, but really as the leader in streaming, the future of the music industry in a lot of ways.
But yeah, we take our responsibility really seriously. I wouldn't say we're making all the decisions. We've got a giant kind of trust and safety team at Spotify, separate from my team, that's thinking about our overall content policy. We've got a licensing team that's working with all of our licensors on policies. My team helps really think through some of the music specific platform policies that really are about the music industry. And yeah, we take that responsibility of uh, being the biggest streaming service really seriously, and
Yeah.
try to set rules that can set up all the artists on the ecosystem up for success on the same playing field, with the same financial and promotional opportunities, and so on. So that's where my team tries to help shape things, and it's really complicated. I know a lot of your videos dive into just how complicated some of these issues are. So we do our best. We always iterate on our policies and try to make them more clear, try to be as transparent as we can about them, and
Yeah.
hopefully help artists know kind of what it means to release music on Spotify and what they can expect to get out of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, something I see a lot, especially in the comments on this channel, and artists will email me with questions. And, the questions are wide ranging about like how royalties work. Am I getting everything I'm supposed to get?
Yeah.
Where do I need to register? Because Spotify doesn't pay all of the royalties. You have to register in multiple places. And what I've found is that the biggest pain point that artists really have is just making sure that even the little guy is treated fairly,
Yeah.
because, artists know that, you can make money with streaming, and they see, A-list artists or signed artists make a lot of money with streaming. But a lot of times there's also a little bit of hesitation that the industry is working right. You know what I mean?
Uh,
And so, what would you say to the artist who's like frustrated, maybe feels that the industry is unfair? What is Spotify doing to help make it more fair for even the smaller artists? Could you speak to that a little bit? Because I know that's
yeah.
probably one of the first things that an independent artist feels is wrong with the industry.
Yeah, I totally understand. And yeah, I've watched a bunch of your videos and read the comments, and my teams across Spotify, we're reading all the comments, reading all the help center tickets. I talk to artists and songwriters and producers all the time, and
Mm.
know how challenging a career in music's always been. And if you look today versus 20 years ago, it's way better in a lot of ways and way harder in a lot of ways. In 2000, at the peak of the CD era, if you made it, if you got over the hump of all the gatekeepers, you probably had to be in the US or Western Europe. You probably had to find a label willing to invest in expensive studio sessions and manufacturing and shipping CDs all over the world. And if you're one of those few thousand artists, it was pretty good. But beyond that, there wasn't a lot of opportunity. Now with streaming, the good part is way more opportunity. We
Mm.
recently shared our annual Loud and Clear report, where kind of detail all
Right.
the royalties being paid out on Spotify, and 50% of the 10 billion a year we pay out goes to indies. That's
Mm.
artists signed to indie labels, DIY artists, indie distributors, and certainly 20 years ago there was not $5 billion going out to a huge segment of DIY artists, and um, uh, there's so much more opportunity, right, on all sides of the ecosystem. At the same time, now there's more competition than ever. 12 million people have uploaded music to Spotify, and just like there's so many people trying to make it professionally as a content creator. I know you yourself with your YouTube channel have been building a business around that. It's really hard. Being a professional TikToker or YouTuber is really hard. Being a professional writer in the age of the internet is really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Before I was here, I was working at Medium, the blogger platform,
Yeah.
launching the Medium Partner Program, trying to help writers and publishers get paid, also really hard. So the first thing I'd say is just, um, I know sometimes Spotify can feel like a black box. We're all listening, we're reading all the comments, we're watching videos like, creators like you, and there's lots of great creators educating artists and songwriters around the world. So I get how tough it is. You're going from millions of people uploading music, everyone trying to compete to make it, and it can be so challenging. I know how hard it is. Um,
Yeah.
our focus has really tried to be on what we call, emerging and professional artists. So
Mm-hmm.
there's 12 million people releasing music on Spotify. That's great. 20 years ago, probably a lot of those people would have just performed them locally. Maybe you'd cut a demo, like 10 copies to give to friends. Maybe you
Yeah.
never be inspired to make music at all. Now you release it to, 600 million people overnight on Spotify. Um, 8 million of them haven't even released 10 songs. So it's just a handful
Mm.
of songs, probably a hobbyist, releasing a few tracks in the same way. Maybe release a few YouTube videos. You're not trying to be a professional YouTuber. It's great to be able to share it. Um, we're really focused on people trying to make their career in music. And I know that's all the artists who are watching, and a lot of them want an even bigger career in music than they've been able to have right now. And we're trying to create as much of a fair playing field as possible. $10 billion getting paid out every year to the music industry is a ton in historical context. But we're still trying to grow that pool. It was only 1 billion 10 years ago. So in 10
Wow.
years, the amount of money being paid out by Spotify has 10x'd. We want to continue
Mm.
that trajectory. So part of it's just more money in the ecosystem. We're going to keep growing it. The others is to make policies that serve artists trying to make a career in music. So, less a viral song, less, um, mass uploads where,
Mm.
someone uploads hundreds of songs to see what takes off. Not folks who are just uploading 4 songs and aren't serious about it. We're
Yeah.
really focused on, our data shows and off-platform data shows. There's maybe 225,000 or so recording artists who um, are really kind of making a go at it, have released more than 10 songs, have more than 10,000 monthly listeners, which is a bit of a minimum audience at the scale of Spotify.
Mhm.
And every policy we're writing, every initiative we're doing, that's the cohort we're thinking about. The majority of those artists are indie, which is really exciting to see. And we want more and more of them to be able to make a sustainable career in music. We know we're not there yet, but definitely want to be clear about our values in the space.
Wow. Yeah. There's so much there that I'd love to unpack. I like how you equated it to YouTube because I mean, I'm a YouTuber. I speak YouTube language,
Trying to
and
speak your language, yeah.
it was it was definitely interesting to hear that. Like, yeah, if I uploaded 3 songs to Spotify, and thought I was doing enough, that's literally how many songs I personally have on Spotify right now. Like I would, maybe hold Spotify to a different standard compared to YouTube, where if I uploaded 3 videos to YouTube and be like, why haven't I hit, 1 million subscribers yet? That would make zero sense,
Right.
and you said 12 million artists uploading on Spotify, but not every artist is doing the same thing. What would be the recommendation for an artist who wants to just kind of like make a legit catalog on Spotify? Like, what's the minimum number of songs before they can actually start feeling like, okay, I've accomplished the bare minimum? You mentioned 10 songs, but is there like a number that you feel that's even better?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any magic number. We use 10 internally because,
Mm,
the typical album or EP or kind of initial body of work feels like, 10 plus or minus
gotcha.
is a reasonable threshold, but it's not like we have any system that's like waiting for you to get to 10 and something different happens. That's just kind
Gotcha.
of a big round number that
Uh-huh.
we use internally as a milestone. Um, I know artists hate when we give this cop out answer, but there is no exact right number. It's really about leaning in over time. Um, that doesn't have to mean releasing every week. That doesn't have to mean releasing every month. For some genres, fans actually do like that kind of steady flow of new music. For a lot of genres, take your time. Every year, every 2 years, you release a significant body of work, and maybe you keep your fans engaged in the meantime on social. The part that matters is that kind of intentional creative and promotional strategy over time, right? You're not just throwing a few songs out there, not really promoting it, seeing if it takes off, and then being frustrated if it doesn't, and giving up. Um, Being an artist is such a hard career. I have so much respect for it. And, it really is about the creative work, right? That's always the first thing. And then sticking with it. And, on Spotify, on all streaming services, you're rewarded for building that audience over time, right? Every time you release new
Mm,
music, you get more followers. Spotify gets more data on the type of listeners who like your music. So when your next song comes out, we know, oh, people like these listeners will like this sort of song, and you don't have that cold start anymore. The algorithm gets better. Um,
yeah.
Social media sites where you're promoting your music are similar, right? Where it doesn't always have to be a new song that you're pushing out there, but you want to keep engaging the fan base you're growing in some way. Um, and so I think Spotify mirrors what careers in music have always been, which is um, you've got to kind of put in that work to consistently put new music out there and build that fan base. There's a lot of platforms besides Spotify that are particularly good at that like first career stage where you're getting those first fans. And uh, you know, what I think Spotify and streaming rewards is artists who keep at it and build up that catalog and body of work where you're not just waiting for one song to go viral
Mm,
on social. That's not really sustainable. That's like a spike up and down.
yeah.
And having that fan base that's listening to all of your music. And I know you use Spotify for Artists. A lot of the data in Spotify for Artists, we've been trying to move it from like, don't just focus on your monthly listener count and your stream count. Focus on your super listeners, your active audience, your followers.
Yeah.
Because that's what Spotify's built around, sustainable fan base for a long-term career in music. Um, and there's no one right formula for that.
Absolutely. That's so helpful. So let's say that there's an artist with like 100,000 monthly listeners, and they have, an album out and a few singles, and they've really invested a lot of time into just into the growth of their catalog and their art, and sharing it with people. And there are many of my viewers of the channel who are at that spot. But something that they're confused with is like when they look at the published streaming revenue from like Spotify to Apple Music or Amazon Music or even Deezer, what they see in these reports or in like a simple Google search is that these other streaming platforms pay more per stream. And I think that's like a huge widespread discussion. It's like Spotify should pay more. Why doesn't Spotify pay more?
Yeah.
And a lot of artists, I've even seen in the comments that they recommend even changing the model to like a sharing model where the revenue is shared only with the artists that the premium subscriber listens to, and all these different ideas.
Yeah.
Does Spotify know about these discussions and have any data as to like whether or not it actually will pay artists more or less?
Yeah, a lot of stuff in there. Happy to talk. Yeah, like that user-centric model is an interesting one. I'm happy to talk about that. First, yeah, the per stream rate one, we're definitely familiar. I've heard that once or twice. And First, let me say, I totally get why an artist or anyone would calculate a per stream rate. Um, that's the data you have available. You get a check from through your label or distributor. Your stream count. It's pretty easy division. Back in the day of CD sales, you would get a unit sales number, how many CDs you sold, and you never would know how many streams it had, how many times people were playing your CD. And so back then, people would focus on unit sales because that was the data available then. That was probably a better metric for that time than per stream rate is now. Um, no streaming service, including Spotify, pays a fixed amount per stream. It's one of the biggest misperceptions about the streaming economy. No streaming service. And as a listener, it kind of intuitively makes sense once you think about it, because you're paying a fixed amount. You're paying $11, $12 for your streaming service of choice. Less in different parts of the world. 2/3 of that amount on every streaming service is going into the royalty pool, and you can use that service 0 times a month, and your 2/3 of $12 is going into the royalty pool, or you could listen to 10,000 songs, and you're paying the same amount. And so the way every streaming service pays, because listeners aren't paying per stream, is based on this idea of stream share. So if you get 1% of total streams on a platform in a given month or year, you get 1% of the royalty pool. That's the simplest way to think about it. So for people kind of like doing that calculation in their head, no matter what, listeners are paying a fixed amount into the royalty pool each month, 2/3 of their subscription fee. For our free tier, it's 2/3 of ads on music goes into the royalty pool. And then the denominator, what determines kind of the payout per stream is just how active are your subscribers. Are they listening to thousands of songs a month? Are they listening to only a few songs a month? The less engaged your users are, the more you're paying out per stream. But obviously, for intuitive reasons, that's not really a good business for the streaming service or the artist, right? A streaming service where people listen to relatively little music, it means you're making more per stream, but it's probably not retaining subscribers because they're not getting that much value out of it. They're not discovering new music as a result. Sometimes we'll talk about, imagine a streaming service that paid out $1 a stream. It would sound great, but that just means it's a service where the average subscriber listens to 10 songs a month, right? If you paid the standard rate for a subscription, everyone played 10 songs a month only, the service would pay out $1 a month, but no one's going to sign up for that service. Clearly, they're not getting much value out of it. If people only listen to 10 songs a month, why would you retain for another month? You're not really going to tell your friends about it. You're not going to discover new artists that then you go see on tour or buy their vinyl. And so what the industry wants, is really engaging services that grow total payouts. And so, at Spotify, we're focused on paying out the biggest amount, not having the highest per stream rate if you calculate it. And the reason we pay out the most, and we pay out $10 billion a year. No other streaming service even reports how much they pay out because it's less. They could, but they don't. And the reason that we've been able to grow the royalty pool from $1 billion 10 years ago to 10 billion now is because we have the most engaging service. It's the one where listeners listen to the most music. The biggest music fans are on it. They're listening to the most streams per month. That means if you calculate a per stream rate, it's going to be lower, but it's why our retention rate's so high. So people keep paying for music and contributing to the royalty pool instead of canceling. That's why they go from free to paid. 60% of subscribers once started at free. So they try it, they love the product because it's so engaging, then they upgrade, and now they're contributing even more. That's why people tell their friends to try Spotify, right? If you have a service where people aren't listening to much music, that's not good for artists or the industry, even if it's giving you kind of a high calculation of what you're getting paid per engagement. So that's been our focus, incentives are aligned. We pay out 2/3 of all the money from music we make back to artists and songwriters, rights holders. So we want revenue to be as high as possible. The industry wants revenue to be as high as possible. What we're trying to optimize is the total amount of money we're paying out. And we're calculating it the exact same way as every other streaming service. The difference is because our service is so engaging, that's helping us grow the pie even more. And kind of scale and grow at that level.
Gotcha. So yeah, Spotify has more users that are generating more streams, which means that the overall royalty pool is more. But because there's so many users, the cost per stream is less.
That's right. And I always encourage artists. I have no problem with people sharing their per stream rates. If you go into your DistroKid and do that yourself, great. But next to that, share the total payout numbers too, right? If you're trying to educate other artists, show both. Say, here's the effective per stream rate when I calculate it, and here's the total payout. Because we, independent from us, Medea, who's one of the leading music research firms, did a big study last fall with indie labels, indie distributors, and indie artists that they're calling, the most comprehensive study to date. I'll send you a link to put in your show notes. And what they found was over 50% of streaming royalties for the indie community comes from Spotify. For some people, that can feel like it's at tension with this idea of a per stream rate, where like, wait, I thought they paid the least per stream. Why are they powering more than 50% of indie paychecks? And the reason is because our model's based on getting people to listen to as much music as possible, to go beyond just the superstars and discover new artists, listen to more music, fall in love with artists in every part of the ecosystem all over the world. Of the artists who generated over $1 million a year from Spotify last year, they sing in over 17 different languages. Like in the CD era, that's unheard of. It's pretty wild to have artists from all over the world have that level of success. And so that's how we've been thinking about it. How do we maximize artist paychecks? That's been our focus. That's why we're growing the royalty pool like we have. I totally get why people focus on per stream rate. I can't say that enough. But the sort of things that we would do if we wanted to have a higher per stream rate would lower paychecks. We would try to do things to get people to listen to less music. That's going to lead to people canceling or unsubscribing, going back to free. We could pull back from smaller markets that pay out less. That's bad. We want to grow the music industry in markets where there hasn't been a big music industry. Our free tier is incredible at not just bringing in billions of dollars in additional money to the royalty pool, but also getting people to try it out, not resort to piracy, upgrade to premium. These are all things we could do that would say, okay, we've increased the per stream rate, but everyone would get paid less. And so, ultimately, we felt like the right thing to do is optimize those, maximize the paychecks, not the per stream rate.
Gotcha. And you brought up piracy, which reminded me of a question. When the royalty pool went from like 1 million 10 years ago to 10 million, you said this year.
Billion, yeah.
Oh, sorry, billion. Yeah, sorry. When the royalty pool went from 1 billion to 10 billion, is that from people like stopping piracy and signing up for a streaming service instead?
Yeah, exactly. Over the last decade, we spent billions in product development to make the product as good as possible, billions more in marketing to get people used to the idea of paying for music and valuing music enough to pay for it. And that's why we're over, a quarter billion premium subscribers now, paying for Spotify every month. Across all streaming services, over 500 million people pay monthly for a streaming service. And we're proud of that industry story, not just, the Spotify part. But yeah, that's been the real engine, making sure people don't choose piracy, don't choose cheaper alternatives, and instead get used to paying for music. And that's a good thing for the industry, for artists. And, I think 10 years ago, 2014 was the low point of global music revenue. The IFPI puts out an annual report that kind of estimates global total recorded revenue in music at 2001, peak of the CD era, it was 22 billion a year because of piracy and the internet. 2014 hit that low point of 13 billion a year. I think when we're recording this later this week, the next report's coming out with 2024 numbers, but they're going to be around 30 billion, which is pretty amazing over 10 years. And, I think 10 years ago, there was lots of really valid questions about the streaming model. Would streaming scale? Everyone knew it was a good consumer value prop, but people wondered if it could be the financial engine to scale the industry. And a lot of those questions have persisted even as growth has been this massive. And so, we're just one retailer paying out more than 10 billion a year. There's a bunch of other streaming services having success, which is great to see for the industry. Vinyl's having a resurgence, the live industry is thriving. We see our role as one important player in the music industry, getting the world to value music enough to pay for it, wanting to invest in artists and all different business lines that they have. And that's been really cool to see.
Yeah, that's crazy, actually. Just to repeat, to make sure I heard it right, the whole music industry has more revenue now than compared to the CD era.
That's right. Yeah, it's 22 billion. And yeah, it's that 22 billion in 2001 was much more concentrated in just the label ecosystem because you couldn't release music DIY like you can now. It was almost entirely kind of North American and Western European artists who were able to have that revenue opportunity. In that year, 2000, 2001, the largest Tower Records in the world had 50,000 CDs on its shelf. And that's probably from 5,000 artists, right? You have 20 different Beatles albums and so on. So, maybe 5,000 to 10,000 different artists have a chance at one sale at that record store. Now, today, the 100,000th ranked artist on Spotify is generating 6,000 a year, which is probably 24, 25,000 across all their recorded revenue sources. And so it's not just that more money is going into music and it's all just going to the biggest stars. It's more money is going to music. And that 100,000th ranked artist on Spotify 10 years ago only made $600. As we've 10x the royalty pool, it's not just going to the top of the ecosystem, it's 10x the royalties to the 100,000th ranked artist too. And, again, 50% of royalties on Spotify are going to indies now, which is up 8-9% from 10 years ago on a percentage basis. So, more opportunities reaching more parts of the ecosystem. And, we're going to continue that growth. We have a lot more work to do. But hopefully it starts to feel like more artists have a real chance at a sustainable career.
In fact, there's an image that maybe I'll put it up on the screen if I could find it, of this tiny mountain and then the music industry now, and it's a huge mountain representing the increase in revenue. But there's also so many more mountain climbers on the biggest mountain. We have so many creative tools. It's easier to record at home than ever before. It's easy to distribute, choose your distributor, and it's you can get a song out for under $10. And I totally get what you're saying, that yes, there's more money than ever before. Independent artists are part of claiming that, right?
Right. As there's more money, because we're making sure it's going across the whole ecosystem and not just to superstars or major markets, over time, that means more indie artists able to make enough revenue to make a real career at it. I read comments all the time about how hard it is to make it in music now. And with our Loud and Clear report, we're trying to be as upfront as we can. We're not saying our job's done and 10 billion is all it's going to be. No, we're trying to grow more. And we're also not pretending like everyone who wants to make it has made it or is going to make it when there's
Mm.
12 million uploaders on a platform, and however many are really trying to make a career in music. um, like in every creative field, not everyone's going to make it, and we're trying to be kind of upfront about those realities. And at the same time, we're trying to make sure everyone has access to data and Spotify for artists and playlist pitching and promotional tools and creative expression tools and merch and concert promotion tools, so that even more artists, who might have a small team around them or no team around them, can kind of compete in such a competitive industry.
Absolutely. I kind of want to change gears a little bit because there's the whole money discussion that we spent a great amount of time just now having. And then the other thing that I've noticed a lot in comments lately is that there's a lot of concern about the future of the music industry regarding AI music and websites like Suno where you can generate a song really quickly. I looked it up before the call because I had to make sure I got the numbers right. But with a paid Suno plan, you can generate about 500 songs a day. And that is an incredible amount of music that could potentially be uploaded to Spotify, and it can completely squash out another artist who's, recording in their bedroom and, performing their own acoustic guitar and singing with their own voice versus
Yeah.
someone else using a machine to generate the music. It's just an interesting dynamic. And I know that a lot of artists are loving the AI tools and experimenting with them, but a lot of artists are really concerned that a future is being ushered in where a regular musician who just loves creating in the normal, typical
Yeah.
way is going to be competing with these AI generators. And what is Spotify doing to plan for that? And are there any policies in place yet or planned that you can share with us?
Yeah, I empathize with the question so much. It's a scary time in the world with the kind of uncertain future of AI. I I personally hope, and I know Spotify's focus is on helping human artists thrive. I think AI is best served as an additional tool for human artists, never to replace human artists, and that's something we take really seriously. Um, you know, we would never want to limit the creative tools an artist has at their disposal. If they use autotune or if they don't use autotune, if they play instruments themselves versus synthetic instruments, if they want to use, especially if they're on a budget, if you want to use mixing or mastering tools that automate things, make things cheaper, great. I hope that human artists are able to use AI tools to express music in a whole new ways that we can't even imagine yet, all those things. Um, what we want to make sure is um, human artists aren't replaced, that listeners aren't getting used to listening to music from AI and thinking it's the same thing as human music. And it's kind of complicated right now, especially in the policy space, because the tech's moving so fast. Um, uh, it's not exactly clear how human artists will want to use AI and how the tools are going to evolve. So we've really been focused right now on policies in the areas that we know are no-fly zones, and that's using AI to impersonate and using AI to accelerate spam. So on the impersonation front, full stop. Spotify's policy is you cannot use AI. You can't AI or not. You cannot impersonate another artist without their consent, without their authorization. So, I guess whether that's like you doing an impression of them and pretending you're them, or more likely now you're using AI. If that's not authorized, that's part of our deceptive content policy. We're taking it down, and we take that really seriously. And we're trying to work on some new tools in that space to make that even better. And
Mhm.
then on spam, AI hasn't presented new forms of spam you couldn't do without AI. It's just that AI can do it way faster. So, what we call, like mass uploads or a supply spam, where you upload tons of tracks and try to see if any of them take off. That
Yeah.
tracks might be really similar to each other. You could do that before with AI. It's way easier to use that. So we've been investing a ton in um, kind of spam deterrence, and lots of really kind of cool tech to make sure AI spam isn't getting any momentum on the platform. That middle part where you're using AI to, you're not impersonating and you aren't spamming, and you're, a human artist who's using AI in some way. Right now, we'll have to see how the tools evolve. We've been piloting some of the detection tools that are still in early stages. They all still have a lot of, false positives. They label something as AI that we know isn't, but they're making some progress. And what we're seeing, what I know Deezer in their announcement confirmed they're seeing too, is there's basically no streams of entirely AI generated music right now. Whatever the volume is, no one's listening to it yet. And, if that changed, of course, we would try to look at why that's happening, what to do about it. But, it's really early in those stages. We've been building a lot of tools to help artists kind of focus on artist-fan connection in ways that AI will never be able to do. So we're finally bringing music videos to Spotify. They're live in over 100 markets. We're working on the US and Canada. You can do artist clips now, under 30-second videos, tagged to your song, telling the story behind the song. You can do listening parties, which is in beta right now, where we get your top fans and we get them in a live room with you and you play music and can bring them on stage and talk to them about it. We've been investing in all those tools because artist fan connection's the core of the music industry, and that's what our focus is on. And those are the sorts of things that will always outcompete AI, and that's why we're investing so much in building them on the platform. Because if you're a listener, you need to know what's human, you need to know what's AI. We want metadata on platform that would tell people what's human and AI once there's kind of industry standards around it. But fundamentally, we want to make sure that fans continue to love human music. And that means, video content, personality-driven content, helping them promote their live shows where they're building that fan base, merch, so people can, support them in the real world. So that's why I've been investing so much there.
I'm so glad that Spotify is advocating for real art creation. And yeah, I understand that, you can use AI tools to speed things along, or even just to help with smaller budgets. Like, that's awesome. But it sounds to me like if someone, paid for a premium AI plan and could generate, 2,000 songs a day, there's absolutely no way they can upload them to Spotify, right?
No, and our spam filters are catching those. They're not getting recommended. That's not a tactic. It's not worth anyone trying because it's not going to pay off. It's not going to get streams. Completely.
Spotify seems to be incorporating a lot of what social media is used for now, right? Uploading videos, connecting directly. Something that I always thought, Spotify needed was a way to communicate better with the fans that stream your music on Spotify. So it sounds like a lot of headway is being made in that direction. When can people expect to see in the United States those awesome features being rolled out? Any idea?
And the US artists can use everything besides official music videos. We're still working on the licensing. So that's available in 100 countries outside the US and Canada, but Canvas, clips, countdown pages are fully available around the world to artists. And then listing parties is in beta, but we're working to roll that out as soon as we can.
That's really cool.
And you compared it to social media, which makes sense because they are social features. We think of them really different because they're about the music. If you're uploading this content to Spotify, it's not competing with cooking videos and pet videos. And, you have to look a certain way as an artist to get people to follow you. And then you kind of trick them by putting some music in later on. When it's on Spotify, it's about the music. It's connected to the music. And when we're deciding, which video clips to recommend to listeners, we're optimizing for when are they likely to like your music and click right into the song from it. We're not trying to optimize for video views. It's always about streams. It's always about artist content to get to the music based on music taste, based on the catalog. And so that's pretty different than social media, where you just have to catch attention, whatever it takes. And that can be great for getting like brand new people into your audience to check you out on Spotify. But we're trying to make the content about the music and about the artist, and not another place where you have to like come up with concepts of what to post to go viral.
Right. And I think you said it earlier today that Spotify is more of like a phase two part of the ecosystem, whereas, social media is where you can post a lot and maybe get noticed, jump on different trends or whatever. But that's not what Spotify is about.
Yeah.
It's more of a place to bring the more engaged fans to enjoy your catalog at the end of the day. And sure, that could be from social media. In fact, that's probably one of the better ways
Yeah.
to attract new people. But yeah, I totally get what you're saying, that Spotify is not trying to just become another social media. I think that's a
Yeah,
really
there's better places than Spotify to like build that initial audience.
yeah.
There's some ways you can do that on Spotify, but that could be tougher. There's
Mhm.
great platforms to do that. Our focus is really kind of once you're at that level where you're aspiring to be a professional artist, or you are a professional artist. That's what our tools are kind of. That's what they're optimized for you.
Earlier, you mentioned the spam filters for uploading AI and uploading like mass numbers of tracks and songs. And that reminded me of another really common topic that I see a lot below my videos and people email in. And it has to do with like fake artificial streaming, bots. Everyone's talking about bots, and there are these companies that, you can pay them like $9 for like 1 million streams or something like that. Obviously, it's not real marketing. And I would love to know like what Spotify is continuing to do to not only remove bots from the platform, but also to make sure that the royalty pool is not getting stripped away from real
Yeah.
people, right? And it's going to like the bot people, you know what I mean? So like, can you explain, as a marketing and policy guy at Spotify, like, what are you doing about the bot stuff?
Yeah, I know it's scary, and I know how personal it feels for a lot of artists. And we've been investing a ton in building out our artificial streaming kind of detection and enforcement processes, because we want to make sure we're protecting that royalty pool. Right, there's a bit of a kind of fixed pool of money, right? The $10 billion a year, the more that goes to people who are using artificial streaming um, uh, to get money. That's money that should be going to artists who are doing it the right way, who are building that authentic fan base and getting streams through legitimate means. Um, and so that's why we take it so seriously. It's all about protecting the royalty pool, making sure that we kind of deter bad actors who often are taking advantage of artists, or they're trying to create their own music to have something to put artificial streaming against to get royalties. That's really important to us, because it's protecting the royalty pool to make sure as much as possible is going to those emerging and professional artists. I'm never going to pretend we get it right 100% of the time. And believe me, I've seen all the stories of folks who get caught on a playlist. After taking no action, their music's just put on a playlist that bots are on, and it can mess up their data in Spotify for artists and can create issues with their distributor. I get how tough that is. We want to make zero errors, of course, and we're trying to get better and better. And so, a recent news article, you could throw some headlines up on the YouTube. It was kind of one of the first big kind of law enforcement cases in artificial streaming, because it is a crime to try to artificially stream to make money on music. And it was a guy named Michael Smith who kind of had a bot-driven scheme across all different streaming services and ended up getting like $10 million in royalties.
I
Only a
remember
few,
that article. Yeah.
like low tens of thousand. I think like 60,000 of the dollars came from Spotify. The rest were from other streaming services, and that's because of all the investment and work that we've done to catch artificial streams and botted streams as much as possible. And,
Mm.
right, any money that we hadn't caught for a bad actor like that that would have been less money for everyone else.
Yeah.
We were able to get that money back too, the 60K, but right, when we see things like that, that's showing us we're getting better and better at doing it. We have more work to do to make sure we're always catching the artificial streams, and artists who didn't do anything aren't kind
Mm.
of caught in the crosshairs. And yeah, I've loved the work you've done to educate artists about services online that are too good to be true.
Yeah.
They are too good to be true, right? Like that's
Yeah.
where, and like I sit with artists sometimes and they'll show me their Instagram, and every ad they're getting is one of these services promising a crazy amount of streams, and there's no bots for a really low amount of money. And we talked earlier about how hard it is to break into music. Artists are putting their life into their work, and you want to do anything possible to promote it. Um, and so when these services are taking advantage of them by kind of harping on that vulnerability, charging money for botted streams,
Yeah.
that can really mess up um, that artist's trajectory on streaming.
Straight up lying,
Yeah,
basically.
that's like a crime to me. Like that,
Yeah.
I find that physically so upsetting. Um, it's awful. And so the more we're educating artists about avoiding those services, the better. Because
Mm.
all the time, you just have to know, partners you're working with, services you're hiring. I wish there was easy ways to vet them. The best advice I can give is uh, go to Reddit and search for the services when an artist has a bad experience there. They share, search
Yeah.
Twitter, search Threads. Who like for any shady service, they'll start to change their name once word gets around. So
Yeah.
you really have to stay real time about it. But
Yeah.
you know, try to rely on services other people have used and had good experiences with. Search around and try to verify what their actual tactics are doing. Keep an eye on your Spotify for Artists data and other streaming service dashboards to see if you're seeing anything weird. Because I know how tough it is to make it as an artist, and all these things are just making it harder, not easier.
Yeah. Now, I love that you brought up that recent fraud case because I was actually blown away out of let me know if I'm getting the numbers right. Out of $10 million that this guy defrauded using bots, out of 10 million, only 60K was from Spotify.
Exactly.
So that means that he barely the other streaming services got super scammed, and Spotify barely was scammed by this guy.
Yeah, and it's really a testament to the tech we're building. I
Yeah.
know I don't want to come across as not caring about the times that an artist does nothing and gets caught on one of these playlists. And
Mm.
I've read all the comments. My
Yeah.
team's read all the comments. We've recently launched a new playlist reporter form through Spotify for Artists because of all the comments we were getting and really understanding how tough that was for artists. Where now you can kind of submit to us the name of the service you signed up for, the name of the playlist, help us. We find a lot of them really fast. It's helped us understand where they're promoting their services, how people got caught up in them. And
Hmm.
yeah, all those submissions have been really helpful. So yeah, I see, we see and hear all of it.
Yeah.
The
That's
reason we
good.
care so much is that we want to protect the royalty pool for artists doing it the right way. Of course, I get that doesn't take away how frustrating it is when you feel like you didn't do anything and something happens. And in the space of artificial streaming, obviously we can't share everything we're doing, because if you say publicly what you're doing, the bad actors then know not to
Yeah.
do that and they try something else. But just no, we hear loud and clear the challenges with some of those playlists, and there's things we've been working on with distributors to make that kind of process a little bit less painful for artists.
Spotify is also taking the playlists down, right? You guys are actively cleansing the platform from these bots all the time.
Yeah, we're taking down the playlists all the time. I'll say, yeah, user playlists are a small minority of total artificial streams. I know they get outsized kind of commentary on social because it tends to be where some of the more challenging situations happen. But
Mm.
you know, uh, anytime that happens, we don't like it. Obviously, on social, when artists know where the artificial streaming is coming from, and maybe they knew what they were doing, often it's a
Hmm.
service they thought was one thing and it turned out to be another. Right?
Yeah.
That's not when you're sharing your story on social. And
Yeah.
you know, we know from the data that's a minority of total artificial streams are from user playlists. Because
Gotcha.
of how important that's been to artists, we've been focusing a ton on trying to improve some of the challenges they're feeling. But
Mm.
just know when you're kind of reading comments from artists, uh, you know, if you know where the artificial streams came from, you're not sharing that story, and so there's always going to be a bit of that asymmetry.
Yeah.
And I say that just to give some like perception context without minimizing how rough it can be when you're put on a playlist and you didn't sign up for any service at all.
Right. Right. Yeah. Man, so many thoughts. The first thing I'll say is that there's also artificial streaming that goes straight to your artist profile, theoretically, right? That's the main type that you see far more often.
Yeah, I mean, you see folks trying in all different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, our team's seen it all.
Okay.
Uh, you know, artist profiles sometimes, catalog pages
Oh
sometimes,
wow.
user playlists.
Yeah. I'm not trying to give
All those
anyone
things.
bad
Yeah,
ideas.
I know. Always be careful
Yeah.
because there's been times in the past where we've said something and then overnight in our artificial streaming data we see behavior shift.
Yeah.
So we're careful about what we say. But yeah,
Hmm.
believe me, they're
Yeah.
trying it all for sure. And another thing that I think gets complicated for folks is, and it's fair because it is confusing. Sometimes we're catching artificial streams before it reaches your Spotify for Artists dashboard, so you're not going to see them in your data. And
Mm.
sometimes we're catching them after it's hit your Spotify for Artists dashboard, and just because of how insanely expansive our data pipelines are.
Yeah.
Once it's reached Spotify for Artists, we always remove it from public metrics. So monthly listener count, all-time track stream counts, those are always up to date. But sometimes you'll be able to see the artificial streaming spike. Sometimes we've caught it before, and I know that's always confusing because if you feel like you can see it sometimes in your Spotify for Artists, you feel like you should always see it. But a great portion of the time we're catching it quickly enough it won't even hit your dashboard,
Yeah.
and so that can make things confusing as well.
But that's also a really good thing too, because if, let's say, like some guy wants to like create some bot playlists, right? They're going to fill that bot playlist with real artists also. They're going to have, the A-listers, they're going to have like The Weeknd, Drake, and all these people to kind of make it look legit. And so, you know, that technically means that Drake and The Weeknd and these real artists are also getting bot streams.
Yeah,
And it's good to know that just like you guys have invested so much in the detection that it's basically getting removed half the time before it even hits the data. That's
that's right.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, and then yeah, I'll just read it. Every time we catch artificial streams, whenever we catch them, the public metrics are updated. We
Mm-hmm.
make sure there's no benefit in chart positions. We're not
Mm-hmm.
paying out royalties on it, and that's every time, whether it hits your SRA or not. We're making sure artificial streams don't result in royalties, public metrics, and chart positions.
Mm-hmm.
Then, of course, every artificial stream we report to the label or distributor so they can get a sense of the streams that they might have seen in S4A, how many were actual royalty bearing streams, so they can pass that on to their artists.
Right. Wow. And there's so this is like one of like my favorite topics personally, because it's like it's so wild what's happening. But I want to move on to this other more recent development with Spotify, which is the bundling of audiobooks. And I've seen a lot of content put out. A lot of artists were honestly, I think some were confused and others were upset because they thought that audiobooks were, taking royalties away from music. And I did a little digging into this, and you guys also increased the subscription cost to kind of compensate for it. But I want to hear it directly from you. Like, should artists be worried about audiobooks on Spotify? And is that really removing their royalties or taking their royalties away?
Yeah, it's another complicated one. The answer is definitely no. They should not be worried. And the reason podcasts and audiobooks have been great for artists on Spotify is because that those bundles bring new subscribers, new users into the ecosystem. We build great value there, and that grows the pie for everyone, right? Like you come in for audiobooks, you stay for streaming, you buy the subscription, the majority of your money, unless there's one plan we have that's audiobook only, every other plan, the majority of the money is going into the music royalty pool. Music royalty pool is completely separate from the pool used to pay authors and publishers. So, no matter what percentage of listing on the platform's music versus audiobooks, people listen to more audiobooks. That doesn't take away from the music royalty pool. They're fully separate.
That's good to know.
Yeah, obviously we have bundles now. All of our major streaming service competitors have bundles as well.
Like Apple and Amazon. I see the Apple bundle where you can get Apple TV with Apple Music, and
YouTube Premium has kind of ad-free video with YouTube Music, and so on. And all these bundles, we wouldn't be able to do that. We wouldn't be able to license them with music if we weren't showing the way that they grow revenue for everyone. You want to have as compelling a product offering as possible to bring in as many subscribers as possible. And what our data has shown is people come in to listen to podcasts, they come in for audiobooks, and then they fall in love with our music offering and they're listening to tons of music. For people who come into Spotify for music, it helps retain them, right? You can get the same music catalog on all different streaming services. And, that's why every streaming service has wanted to help expand their value to be able to make sure that, folks in between, new releases they're excited about, you have more content there. None of the streaming of podcasts, none of the streaming of audiobooks has any impact on the music royalty pool. The recent news you're kind of referring to around audiobook bundling, the reason it kind of reached the news was because of a kind of lawsuit that was recently dismissed around our rules. And, a number of years ago until recently when we started doing direct deals with publishers, in the US, all of our publishing deals are statutory. They're managed through kind of government regulation and government bodies where, all the streaming services, all the publishers, every few years with kind of a government entity negotiates exactly how all these rules work. It was a highly negotiated one a number of years ago when the most recent cycle happened, and the publishing side of the industry celebrated when the new terms are reached because it was really a win-win for both sides. One of the terms in there is in the US for mechanical royalties, and I'm sure your listeners know there's mechanical royalties and performance. So this is for one portion of publishing royalties just in the US. There is a provision in there that every streaming service follows, that if you have a bundle, there's a different rate paid out to publishers compared to if it's a music-only service. And that's because both parties know that bundles help increase the overall pie, bring more money to music, and this enables services to kind of make the economics of bundling work so you can pay some of the other content creators and kind of align incentives that way. The recent lawsuit was, recently dismissed in court because the kind of rules are really straightforward. All streaming services follow it the same way. For us, we went from not being a bundle to a bundle, whereas I think everyone just kind of knows Apple One and Amazon Prime and YouTube Premium.
Been around for a while as bundles. Yeah.
And so, we're all following the same rules. One of the recent things that we're excited about is this is part of what's hard when kind of it's government mandated rates and processes. And, there's some good things about it. Part of it that's hard is they are inflexible, right? The rules are really clear. If you have a bundle, this. If you don't, that. And we've recently started doing direct deals with publishers. And so with Universal and Warner most recently, and we're looking forward to hopefully doing more similar deals in the future. We now do direct licenses even in the US with publishers. And that's where you can have, real negotiations around what's important to the songwriters and the rights holders, what's going to help the platform grow, and kind of come to terms that everyone feels good about.
Yeah.
And Yeah, one of the data points we shared in Loud and Clear is there was double digit publishing royalty growth on Spotify from 2023 to 2024.
Hmm.
Over $4.5 billion paid out to publishers over the last 2 years. Um, that's kind of tremendous, especially in a historical context. If publishers are getting paid more than they ever have in decades, and we're really happy with Spotify's role in that. So that's some of the background of why artists have read press headlines around it.
Yeah.
It's confusing. It's frustrating. Um, I
Mhm.
get that. Uh, it's frustrating for artists to read, but that's some of the background of kind of how we got here.
Yeah. And just to clarify, nothing changed with the royalty pool. It was actually just one small other publishing royalty that's mandated by law already.
That's right. It's just the
Yeah.
mechanical royalty pool. Mechanical
Mechanical royalty.
royalty is just in the U.S. That's right.
Gotcha. Okay. And then you mentioned direct deals with publishers like Universal and Warner. Does that mean that Universal can actually come to bat for their writers and craft a better deal directly with you guys? Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, exactly. So it used to be we were just doing kind of these direct licenses with the recording side of their business. In our most recent renewal, we're doing it with their publishing side as well. So, um, and we started there. We're gonna, we'd love to do deals like this with publishers of all sizes. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, when you do that, you can kind of talk about what's important to they're songwriters. We can talk about what's important to us, and you focus less on government set um, regulate rates and policies, and more
Mhm.
on a business negotiation. So that's what we've done there, and certainly there's pros and cons of both approaches, but uh,
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's easier for us to be much more responsive to songwriter business needs when we're kind of working with those stakeholders directly.
Yeah. And then where do independent artists who use distributors fall into that? Do they just follow the government set um, royalty rates?
Yeah, it's in the US right now, super important for all indie artists to register to collect their publishing, performance, and mechanical. And yeah, most of the leading DIY distributors kind of have easy ways to help you do that. So make sure you're collecting all the money that you're owed. Right now in the US, they're still represented by the kind of government rates and processes. Yeah, over time, we want to do a lot more direct deals with publishers, including ones that would represent indie and DIY artists as well. So more to come there, but that's right. Right now in the U.S., for every streaming service, the government sets kind of all the policies there.
Yeah. But it seems like, you start putting these deals into place with like Universal and Warner, and then you follow that thread, and eventually you'll probably want to pursue deals with even the largest distributors as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. We want to cover as much of the ecosystem as we can.
That's awesome. Well, Sam, thanks so much for doing this, man. Like, and especially from me specifically, thanks for diving into these topics that I know are huge concerns. Like, my job is honestly just to be like a mouthpiece, like to pass along like what I'm seeing from independent artists, what they're commenting, what they're emailing me, and advocate for them. And so, thank you for being willing to dive into these crazy topics like AI and bots and
Yeah.
Spotify's royalty rate, and just speak to it directly. Really appreciate that, man.
Yeah, listen, I know how important those specific issues are to artists who are trying to build their careers, and we want to talk more openly about it everywhere we can. So thanks for having me on, and thanks for helping to educate so many artists. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, man. I hope we get to talk again soon. And just thanks for doing this. And everyone watching, tell Sam thank you in the comments. And I hope to have you back, man. It was really great learning from
Oh,
you and learning more about Spotify and how it works, man.
looking forward to it.
Thanks, man.